Remember this? Check it out right here. Destiny 2 streamer says Bungie held a marathon gameplay summit for FPS players, but nobody was interested. Reportedly, no one raised their hand when asked if they'd play Marathon if it came out tomorrow. This was all the way back in November when this was talked about, so don't worry, this isn't some brand new thing out there. However, we might have an inkling into why these people weren't so hot and heavy to get involved with Marathon. We'll check it out right here. Asmongold has the inside line on this, as usual. It's brought to us by Geralt of Gunia, the Herald of Asmonlactus. You'll have to let me know down below if you like the Asmonlactus or do you like Galactmangold. I like Asmonlactus better because I don't know what the lactus part means and I feel threatened by that.
I think that pretty much every single circumstance, it's always a bad idea to make characters that are not conventionally attractive.
Ta-da!
Because this is, again, this is a shooter game, and shooter games are going to be primarily played by men.
Wow.
So if you're making a shooter game that's primarily made for men, then you should make sure that all of the female characters in the game are fuckable.
Whoa! Whoa! Who would have ever have guessed? But meanwhile, over at Bungie, they had other ideas. You might be noticing that this looks kind of like one of those Chinese bootleg Master Chiefs. Like some guy's Unity asset refit of the Halo franchise. And mainly it's because this character is in the pose of Master Chief. But Master Chief's iconic pose there. He's got like one leg up and the gun ready to go. And that's what you're looking at here is Bungie's best attempt to rip off their most successful franchise ever with another franchise that was pretty successful, but not as successful as Halo. So what this is, though, is this is a biomata. And this is intended to be the characters that you play as in the marathon game that you pay $40 for, by the way. We're going to get into that in a minute, so hang tight. Hold it. It looks like 73% of you watching this aren't subscribed. Time to click that button. You know where to find it. So you're going to pay this kind of mentality behind character design. You're going to pay $40 for this, okay? Now, these are the biomata, all right? Now, in the setting, these characters are printed out by genetically altered silkworms. I really don't know what else to call them. That's in world they have their own name, but like outside of that, you and I, would call them genetically altered silkworms. And so that's who prints out these biomata, and they are then thrust onto Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, Tau Ceti, sorry. They're then thrust on Tau Ceti to fight each other to the predictable eternal end, the heat death of the universe. I'm not kidding you. This is they're eternal mercenaries that are going to fight each other until they're paid not to or told not to fight anymore, and they won't be given any money to fight. In world, obviously. So that means the game's never going to be over because you're just constantly dying and never really dying because you're just running around in a worm poop suit. Anyway, that's the genius behind Marathon that thought this would be a really cool idea to just have immortal mercenaries killing each other in space forever. And again, like on its surface, that sounds like a great idea, but ta-da! This is the execution of that thought. And again, Bungie's getting nervous about this. So here it is. Here it is from the Marathon Bulletin. It says, Marathon leadership was reportedly nervous after gameplay reveal reactions and hoped lifting the NDA for the upcoming closed alpha would help shift the narrative. And this comes from Paul Tassi over at Forbes. And we're just going to cruise on over there and take a look. Now, I highlighted the important part here because Paul Tassi likes to make sure that everybody's balls are warm. And I'm just not that kind of a guy. I'm not the ball warmer. That's Paul's part. And that's, that's who he is. So here we go. We have the closed alpha exists truly as a technical test ahead of the launch. They didn't want it to open now to everyone because they need to limit the number of players so things don't totally break. Bungie is a multi-million-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, okay? Microsoft is a multi-billion-dollar company. What happened here where they can't keep a game running if there's more than 100 people in it, if there's more than 1,000 people in it? What is going on? What's happening? Like that, I could get that if that was like Schedule 1 with like that guy in his garage making a very popular video game. I could understand that guy saying like, hey, I rented a server for $10. Let's try not to crash it with 10,000 people. I get that, but like, What is a multi-billion-dollar Microsoft subsidiary sweating about server space? Like, what is that all about? What's that's bizarre. They need at least a somewhat limited test like this, certainly not uncommon in the industry. Now, again, not that it's uncommon, it's just that particular reasoning doesn't make a lot of sense. So what you would do in this NDA situation is that you would enforce this to make sure that the people seeing problems with the game don't go out and talk about them. Not that you would want to limit the amount of people to come in so that those problems would proliferate and be the only feature of the gameplay. That's bad. That's not good to be making a game that's having that kind of problems that you're publicizing anyway. So Bungie did the NDA assuming things would leak given the scope of the test, but as long as it would be somewhat limited to the good enough, it would be limited to good enough. So what this means is that they put this in place, and it's shady. Okay, it's shady. You ever get one of those nudies from one of the girls you're talking to, and she's in a towel, and she's like woohoo, little nip slip. Yeah, that's what this is. That's what the NDA is. It's basically making sure that they can make a huge story out of anybody talking about this. Well, we told you not to talk about it. They're not going to send anybody to court over it, but they're going to try and make headlines over Bungie leaks. Marathon leaks are all over the place. Bungie in panic. And that gets clicks. Because what have I told you, right? What have I told you for over a year? More than a year now. They can't defeat the ad blockers. They have to use controversy to reach you and I. There's no way to advertise to us anymore. There really isn't. Once you have that ad blocker program in, once you've paid for the ad blocker subscription on whatever website offers it, that's it. They can't reach you unless it's through controversy. And that's what the point of this is. It's to bake in a controversy when the predictable happens. So here we are. After the reaction to the gameplay reveal, leadership was nervous, but they tried to reassure teams. Ultimately, they figured it would shift the narrative if the NDA was lifted. I'm also seeing a ton of codes go out, plus friend codes, so I wonder how many alpha denials are even going to happen. It does, in fact, seem to have helped. Now, what I have to say to this is that the majority of people responding to conversations about this alpha, about the news going out about this alpha, didn't get a invite. Okay. And these are some pretty prominent players that are saying, like, nope, that wasn't me. I'm not involved in this. So here we are with the Ubisoft picking their favorites thing again. Now, a corporation is allowed to do that. You're certainly allowed to go around and find people that will say nice things who are sycophants for your brand and will do whatever you ask them to do simply for access. That's perfectly fine. That's what Ubisoft did. And so this is what Bungie's trying to do now, is stack things in their favor by making sure that only the right people are allowed to play this alpha so that they don't go out and say things that are too critical, that are too sensational, you see? And we'll get into why this is such a big problem here in just a second. So here we go. There will be an open beta likely in August, much closer to launch, where you will then be able to pre-order its various editions ahead of September 23. So this is a game. This is a game where, yeah, believe it or not, surprise, this is a game where you're going to go out and do like an extraction shooter thing. It's got a couple of other things layered on top of it to try and make it more interesting for you, but it is just an extraction game. It's Tarkov in space. And so you have this kind of like cycle already in it now where these extraction shooters kind of come and go. They don't really have the lasting power of a hero shooter because you can build a story into the hero shooter, whereas Marathon has said there's no campaign mode. You're going to learn everything as you are playing matches. That's it. You're just doing straight matches, and there is no campaign mode for you to screw around in the Marathon universe in. It's just you versus everybody, and you got to pay $40 for access. That's what this article is all about. Paul Tassi coming out and making sure that Marathon's balls are warm, making sure that Bungie's balls are warm. Everybody's comfortable because we've got to make sure that you don't threaten that access, right? Because without that access, Paul's not very important to Forbes anymore. Now, is he? And so at this time, as everyone assumes, Marathon cost $40 in the vein of Helldivers and yes, Concord, which had a campaign mode. You simply cannot pull the trigger this late on suddenly making a game free to play, even if it's a common complaint. Well, that didn't stop them with Destiny, now did it? That didn't stop them with Destiny. And I don't think it's too late. You haven't sold the game yet. You obviously can still make it free to play. It isn't out yet. This is ridiculous. It's another way that Paul Tassi and other gaming journalists try to pad things out and say, well, you didn't know this, but it's super duper hard to make a game free to play when it was pay to play. Nope, not really. It's wherever you make it for sale, you just free to play it. It's like that. You don't put the code in that requires authorization to start playing. It's actually easier. You cut out things out of the pay to play version to make it free to play. Isn't that crazy? Of course, you've got character like designs and expressions like Genshin Impact, which have arguably taken over the youth pretty successfully. And then here's Bungie trying to beat you over the head with no, no, no. You need to pay to play our no lore, no, well, barely any lore, campaignless video game about endless death in space. I hope you enjoy it. But it's not even cool endless death like 40K. It's just boring endless death and that you just shoot each other from half the map away because everybody else's special abilities disabled them. See, what people don't really realize about this whole thing with Marathon, I wanted to call it Concord 2. This whole problem with Concord 2 is that it's going to end up creating a feedback cycle of the players finding a way to exploit it in which one character or many of them goes around disabling most of the other players using their neat little gimmicks. Again, Marathon, Bungie, they think they came up with something neat and unique and fun, but the reality of it is they've really just created a cycle of pain that's only going to play out on them again. This game is soft on reception because nobody's interested in this hyper cyberpunk BS that they're trying to push. The cyberpunk genre is burnt out these days. Now, I'm not saying you want to go to farm punk, run around like me in the flannel and trucker hat, but maybe you want to go out there and play something a little different than some cyberpunk dystopic crap in space that you've seen 10,000 times over. And that seems to be the case with all of these shooter, whatever, looter shooter, hero shooter, pooper shooter, whatever you want to call them. It seems to be the case with all of these, is that they are just trying, they take the formula that worked with COD. You have to excuse me, I have 10,000 thoughts about this. They took the formula that worked with COD, they took the formula that worked with Fortnite, and they took the formula that worked with Apex, and they just kind of smushed it. They didn't make a new thing, they just smushed it all together. And that's what happens with these shooter ripoffs or retakes, whatever you want to call them, is that they end up becoming just cyberpunk slop, just cyberpunk sugar cookies. They don't have anything to them. They're just an attempt to be like, ooh, cyberpunk. I'm going to buy that because it's weird and neon and cyberpunky, And that's all the thought that went into this. As I said, it has barely anything to do with the marathon lore that built up this franchise. It's kind of, I'm going to puke on this. God, I'm going to puke on this. You have to understand this stuff just gets right to my stomach because it's disgusting what they did to Marathon. Now, even look at this, right? So here we go. Bungie says no proximity chat for Marathon. So as I said before, we brought this article up before. It's from last week, but here it is. They are saying this because they don't want you to make your own entertainment in the game.